So what we are seeing in the vaccine rollout in Canada and at least some provinces, blaming the federal government for supply issues, and the federal government saying, look, yeah, there have been some hiccups, supplies coming, but there's problems with provincial rollout plans. Let's bring in Blaine Higgs. He's the Premier of New Brunswick. He's with me now. Premier Higgs, good to see you again. Thanks for taking time to speak with me.
You're very welcome.
Look, let me just start with your province. How's the vaccine rollout been going in New Brunswick?
Well, it is a little sporadic because of supply. I get that, but we have ramped up with pharmacies and with our regional health authorities, and we could do probably twice as many vaccines as we are currently putting out because of supply. But I think the concern has always been continuity, so that we knew what was coming and we could depend on it. So when you ramp up pharmacies, you make appointments, or in communities or wherever, you can actually just follow through with that. So that's why continuity is an issue. But I appreciate the difficulties in getting vaccines, but I remain optimistic that we'll see more availability from the U.S. in the coming weeks. They seem to be ramped up and ahead of schedule, and I know they've had some delays with Johnson & Johnson, but the president seems to be still on track with where they are. So I'm hopeful we'll see a step change there in supply in the coming weeks.
Some of your concerns, other premiers, particularly Premier Ford, Premier Kenney, have been a little more pointed in their criticism of Ottawa's vaccine procurement. You seem less so. There have been, if you have delays from, and everybody's talking now about the delay in the shipments of Moderna, if you have delays from the supplier, and I want to be careful around a conversation around blame, but if you have delays from a supplier, where does the fault lie if we can't get them to Canada quickly enough, or how do you see it?
I think it's a fair comment that you can't fix everything, and if the suppliers have difficulty, then it is what it is. But it does come down to how many do we have committed to begin with, and I think we've seen countries that maybe went all out there and said, well, we're going to just bet on a horse here and we're going to get supplies, and Israel would be an example of that. But I guess I just say that, yeah, I appreciate that my colleagues are in a bit of a different situation than we are here. Everyone is being a bit anxious about getting the vaccine, and what I mean by that is everybody wants one, or we're getting lots of demand, so they're anxious. They want to get back to normal. But I mean, we've seen some outbreaks certainly in my colleagues' neighboring provinces, in Quebec and Ontario and West, that are would create additional angst. So you can appreciate the pressure that exists there. We've seen an outbreak in the northwestern part of the province. At this point, it's very much contained. Mm-hmm. We're vaccinating higher levels there. We're at 30% there, and the rest of the province are around 20 or 22% of the population. But I just remain optimistic. I'll stay focused on additional supply. That was the context of our First Minister's meeting this past week, and the point of saying to the U.S., you look to be in a position of having additional supply because of your domestic capabilities. We are a neighboring country that we all mutually benefit from being open and in the same position. So I would like to think we get some preferential treatment as a country, as a nation that's the closest trading partner to the U.S. and right, connected in so many ways through families even.
So that you say has come up in your conversation with the Prime Minister. Has there been an appetite in your conversations at the federal level to go that route and get on the phone with the U.S. and say, look, if you got 20 million doses sitting there, we'll take them?
Exactly right, and that was mentioned today. Certainly in our SMR discussion, Premier Ford mentioned that. But that's right. If you got 20 million sitting there, we'll take them. And everyone that could get a vaccine should take it. And so I will remain optimistic that we're going to see a step change. But I am also very confident that with that reliability of supply, every one of us can ramp up our capabilities significantly. I know we can double. We're at around 30,000, 25 to 30,000 because of supply. We could go to 60,000. We think we could go even to about 85 or 90,000. Right. But we could easily double.
So to be clear, are you of the view that it's the delay in vaccine supply and procurement from the federal government that's the main problem, or as some federal MPs and cabinet ministers have been clear in pointing out, look, we're getting doses to the provinces. They're not putting them in arms fast enough?
Well, I would say if you look at the continuity of supply, the provinces are able to roll out the vaccines and whatever level of vaccines that they get in a continuous run. If it's interrupted and if it's hit and miss, and in some cases, like you said with Moderna, if they aren't able to supply and they've had a production problem, yeah, that disrupts the whole supply chains and it creates problems in a province too, to be where the supply is going to go, and to be continuous in the delivery. But I would say overall, certainly, if we had more vaccines, if we had 20, 30% more vaccines in our province right now, in our country right now, they would get into arms very quickly.
Okay, there have been some suggestions, and I think we're starting to hear them more frequently now, that the federal vaccine supply should maybe go to harder hit regions in Canada. That might mean fewer doses for New Brunswick to pump more doses into the province of Ontario for some of the hard hit parts of that province. What do you think of that idea?
Well, we are doing that internally. We're actually, in New Brunswick, we're putting more vaccines into the Edmonton region. As I said, we're about 10% higher there in our vaccination levels. We're focused on the borders, people that are crossing, and to get them vaccinated quicker on the essential service side, like truck drivers, we need them vaccinated. I think we do need to look at every situation in different provinces, but at this stage, we really don't have the vaccine supply to really do that without having a risk in other provinces. So we're working with what we have, and each province is by themselves putting their resources.
So to be clear, you wouldn't be in favor of a plan that says, look, New Brunswick's got a better hold of the third wave than Ontario does, so let's send more doses of vaccine meant for New Brunswick to Ontario instead. Not on?
Well, I don't think at this stage it's a possibility, but could it be future? I mean, we have our own lockdown area right now, but could it be a consideration if our lockdown clears up and we see Quebec, which is kind of the main issue for us, being in trouble? Could we have that discussion if we had lots of vaccines and we were in a good shape? I think it's one that we just shouldn't rule out. But right now, we're not in that position.
All right, let's finish on this. You and your fellow Atlantic premiers have delayed the reopening of the Atlantic bubble until at least May 3rd. Do you think is that a firm date or is that a moving date?
Well, we're meeting again next Thursday to discuss our situations in each province, and in my case, it'll be what the situation is in the Northwest. But we delayed it for 2 weeks, saying May 3rd looks like the earliest. We'll meet next week again to discuss whether that needs to be pushed out, or is there a possibility it could be pulled forward? But I'd likely say May 3rd would be the earliest that we'd be able to consider.
Right.
And it'll be kind of depend on our situation and if anything changes with the other provinces in Atlantic Canada. But ours is the most immediate concern right now.
Okay, Premier Blaine Higgs, always good to talk to you. Thanks again for taking time tonight.
You're very welcome.